Chapter 448, Proof of Identity. Comparing martial arts, the two pavilion heads were definitely no weaker than Ling Tian. In fact, the cultivation of their inner chi was above Ling Tian's. However, Ling Tian's sudden ambush caught them completely off guard. Ling Tian had reached the apex in the ability to grasp opportunities. This was a sure kill attack. Not good. This change was something which no one expected, including Yu Manlu. From the ancient times, not a single martial arts legacy was able to allow someone to turn around immediately without any signs despite charging forward at full speed. This was something that went against common sense. If an ordinary person were to attempt something like that, he would probably enter into cultivation deviation. However, this first pavilion head was actually able to perform such an action flawlessly and effortlessly. Upon seeing that the situation was dire, the other top-notch experts in the surroundings charged forward without hesitation. Yu Manlu was the fastest of them all and his palm strike was already reaching Ling Tian. While Yu Manlu's speed was truly fast, it was far too late. After going through so much effort to lure these two experts out and meticulously planning an ambush, how would he give up the advantageous situation in front of him? The person on the left revealed a look of resolution and actually sped up further and pounced towards Ling Tian. He was originally using all of his strength to slow himself down, but knowing that it was hopeless, he decided to speed up further to welcome Ling Tian's sword. Since he didn't have a chance to avoid death, he hoped that he would be able to use his own life to save the life of his friend. The next instant, Ling Tian's sword strike was fully unleashed on him and his flesh could be seen flying in all directions as his body was completely dismembered. At the same time, Ling Tian let out a soft sigh and retreated quickly. Ling Tian never imagined that his opponent would be able to resolutely give up his life to save his companion. He was originally charging forward at full speed and upon seeing Ling Tian's attack, tried his best to slow himself down. That action of his had already caused his inner chi to be thrown into disarray. On top of that, he actually sped up again and under the forceful circulation of his inner chi, his meridians were completely ruptured. Even if he didn't die under Ling Tian's sword, he wouldn't be able to survive past an hour. However, his action had saved the life of his friend. The slight disparity in their speed made Ling Tian lose the opportunity to kill the other top-notch expert of the Yu family. Second brother. The black-robed individual on the right let out an indignant roar and charged towards Ling Tian's retreating figure in an almost suicidal manner. His eyes were completely bloodshot as he brandished his weapon wildly without a care for anything in the world. At the same time, three individuals had already blocked Ling Tian's retreating route with their faces filled with grief and hatred in their eyes. Yu Manlu arrived from his sky with his imposing aura, his palm strikes covering the skies and slamming down without any mercy. To the left and right, there were also plenty of experts launching their attacks. Ling Tian let out a roar and shot towards the sky with his sword. His body was then surrounded by layers of green light forming a pagoda, stacking up layer by layer. When the pagoda reached the topmost layer, it suddenly exploded into smithereens, with the shattered light shooting towards all directions. All of a sudden, a brilliant beam of sword light exploded forth like a dragon shooting towards the heaven, and Ling Tian had actually entered into the man and sword as one state in such a moment. This was Ling Tian's strongest attack. It was also the final attack that Ling Tian had been saving. It was very possibly the last attack of Ling Tian's life. This attack could shake the heavens. Be careful. Yu Manlu had instantly identified Ling Tian's attack. As a martial arts expert himself, he would naturally be able to identify Ling Tian's man and sword as one state. After letting out a loud roar, he circulated his inner chi and sent out his palm strike to suppress Ling Tian. The only thing he could do now would be to use his inner chi, which far exceeded Ling Tian's, to forcefully disperse Ling Tian's attack. If he allowed Ling Tian to unleash this attack, while he would definitely be safe, his subordinates might not be able to escape unscathed. Presently, he was the only one who had the confidence to suppress this black masked man, the first pavilion head. "It's actually Ling Jian." Ling Tian gasped and felt his heart tense up. Ling Tian arrived when Ling Jian was trying to break out from the encirclement. "He is one of yours?" Li Zhu landed behind Ling Tian and upon seeing him about to dash out to save Ling Jian, held him back and said, "It's not too late to watch for a while more. This is the interior of the Yu residence. Not only do they have the advantage in numbers, but experts are as plentiful as the clouds. Furthermore, Yu Man Lu is also present and his martial art level is probably above both of ours. So what if there is one more Yu? You can't sacrifice yourself needlessly. If you want to save him, you can't lose your cool." Ling Tian came to his senses after hearing what Li Zhu said and looked towards Yu Man Lu, who was standing off to the side. While he had never seen Yu Man Lu in person before, Ling Tian was certain that he was Yu Man Lu without a doubt. Other than Yu Man Lu, there wouldn't be anyone in Bright Jade City with such charisma. After he heard what Li Zhu said, Ling Tian's gaze swept around and his face turned solemn. With just a casual glance, he saw no less than 15 small success Yan experts. Furthermore, there were hundreds of White Jade experts in the vicinity. Facing such a lineup, not to mention Ling Jian alone, even if Ling Tian was added into the picture, he would have no guarantee of escaping. Even if he were to have the help of justice, he would only have the confidence to leave with his life, but it would be impossible for him to save Ling Jian. Just what should he do? Ling Tian's brows were furrowed. Ling Jian was the one below. Ling Tian would never allow his brother who grew up with him to die in the Yu residence. No matter what, he had to save Ling Jian. However, how could he save him, Ling Jian, in the face of such a frightening lineup? As long as he made a single mistake, it was very likely that he would leave his own life in the Yu residence as well. Li Zhu also frowned as she muttered, "We definitely need a surefire plan if we want to save him now. If we had a 100-foot rope, perhaps we would be able to save him. Hayes, how would be able to find a 100-foot rope in such short notice?" 100-foot rope? Ling Tian's eyes lit up and he instantly understood Li Zhu's intentions. 100-foot rope? Not to mention 100 foot, even if you wanted a 200-foot rope, I would be able to produce it. As he said that, Ling Tian untied his belt. Li Zhu took it over and upon feeling the cold and soft texture of it, lit up, heavenly silk. Ling Tian smiled, "That's right. Is this enough?" "It's enough. More than enough." Li Zhu quickly dismantled Ling Tian's belt with her actions so fast that after images could be seen. "One more thing. While the heavenly silk is long enough, it can't be thrown far. If I were to imbue my inner chi within it, a large commotion would definitely be formed and it may be stopped in mid-flight." Ling Tian rubbed his head and after a short moment of consideration, he took out 2 identical jade pendants. After checking it for a moment, he handed one of them to Li Zhu and said with a crafty smile, "Tie the jade pendant to the heavenly silk, and you can use the jade pendant as a way to throw it. With your inner strength and the aid of this item, it should no longer be a problem, right?" Li Zhu twiddled with the jade and felt a sense of warmth emanating from the jade. She immediately knew that it was definitely a rare item and couldn't help but complain, "We can just find a random brick, why is there a need to waste such a precious item?" Ling Tian chuckled, "This jade is the proof of my identity and will definitely create an unexpected effect. You're smart enough that you should be able to understand it, right?" "Your proof of identity?" Li Zhu studied it carefully and came to a realization, "I see." She then rolled her eyes. "You are truly crafty. To think that you are so scheming even at such a moment. You truly live up to the name of the demon in Heavenly Star." Ling Tian let out a delighted chuckle and just when he was about to say something, he heard a heart-wrenching roar, "Second brother." This was the moment where Ling Jian dismembered the vice head of the firmament charging pavilion. Seeing the countless experts surrounding Ling Jian from all directions, Ling Tian didn't have the time to remind Li Zhu anything, and he pounced forward towards Ling Jian. With just a single jump, he had already shot out 100 feet and entered the Yu residence. His speed was truly unimaginable. If Ling Jian was like a demon, Ling Tian would definitely be exceeding a demon. Ling Jian's sword had collided with 7 to 8 weapons in a short instant, and the sparks from the collision lit up the night sky. The various experts were then pushed back by the force of the collision. Yu Manlu had already arrived above Ling Jian like an eagle soaring into the sky. Like a lion chasing after a rabbit, his figure shot downwards like a mountain. Before Yu Manlu arrived, the palm winds generated from his palm strike had already made it difficult for Ling Jian to breathe. Ling Jian couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. After clashing with 7 to 8 experts no weaker than himself, he was already approaching his limit. Facing the pressure from Yu Manlu, Ling Jian was not shocked but delighted. Ling Jian already knew that it was almost impossible for him to escape with his life, and had decided to take as many people along with him before he died. If he could give this Yu family head an unforgettable lesson or drag Yu Manlu with him to the afterlife, it would definitely be a great matter. He would definitely be able to gain more time and aid for his young noble. Chapter 449, Rescue Mission. Thinking about that, Ling Jian no longer thought about breaking out of the encirclement, and his resolution to die shot through the roof. He abandoned all of his defenses, ignoring the incoming weapons as his cold gaze was locked onto Yu Manlu above him. His eyes were void of all emotions and were filled with calmness and chill. He was like a vulture locking onto his prey. Ling Jian's sword began to let out cc sounds, and the body of his sword reflected the fiery glow of the blaze around him. It was as though his sword was a venomous snake that found out that his prey's action was restricted, anxiously waiting for its chance to pounce forth. Seeing Ling Jian's look of death, Yu Manlu immediately knew what Ling Jian was planning to do and sneered in his heart. While the inner chi and martial arts of this pavilion head in front of him were exceptional, with less than 20 in his Yu family being a match, Yu Manlu had full confidence that he could subdue the first pavilion head. After all, Yu Manlu was no ordinary expert, and the gap between them was immense. Even if the pavilion head in front of him wanted them to perish together, it would be impossible for the pavilion head to succeed. The Yu family's divine bright jade formula was unleashed to its maximum. Yu Manlu began to glow with the light of a treasure, with his palm strike descending like divine lightning. One hit, one kill. However, right at this moment, Yu Manlu felt his back turn cold and felt a strong sense of danger. Not good. There is the ambush of another expert. The danger of this expert is above the first pavilion head in front of me. Who was he? The experts surrounding Ling Jian brandished their weapons and charged at Ling Jian with their full strength. Ling Jian clenched his teeth and his sword shot towards the sky. Ling Jian did not hold anything back at all, and his lifetime's worth of cultivation was imbued in this attack. His sword shot right towards Yu Manlu. Right after Ling Jian's figure shot upward, various weapons cleaved down towards Ling Jian and fresh blood shot out in all directions. In just an instant, Ling Jian was filled with countless injuries and was completely bloodied. After his many years of cultivation and countless life and death struggles, Ling Jian's body instinctively avoided the weapons to ensure that there were no fatal wounds or serious injuries. While Ling Jian had only suffered superficial wounds, such wounds were enough to render others completely immobile. However, Ling Jian's sword strike was still extremely robust and did not weaken the slightest. It was as though the wounds on his body belonged to someone else. If Ling Jian's black mask were to fall off now, everyone would definitely realize that Ling Jian's expression was still chilly and indifferent despite suffering such wounds. In midair, a large black robe was fully spread out, but not a single sound could be heard. With a mountainous pressure, the black robe continued to descend. This scene was like someone entering a nightmare, and despite seeing someone pointing a sword and attempting to kill you, you weren't able to say a single thing. The stifling feeling was enough to drive someone insane. Right at this moment, Ling Tian descended from the sky, saving his ally from the middle of the encirclement. Ling Tian's palm struck towards Yu Manlu like the never-ending waves of the ocean and the majesty of the rivers. At this moment, there were many who had spotted the presence of another mysterious black-robed figure. Yu Manlu fell into the danger of suffering a pincer attack. He could clearly feel that the threat from above him was far greater than the threat posed by the first pavilion head. If Yu Manlu were to continue his attack, while he would be able to kill Ling Tian for sure, the attack from the person above him would definitely heavily injure him or even take his life. In just a short instant, Yu Manlu had made his decision. His originally descending figure had actually drifted past Ling Tian's head and his left palm struck out towards the sky. His legs then sent out a flurry of kicks to receive Ling Tian's sword strike. With a loud bang, Yu Manlu's body trembled slightly and shot out 30 feet away. Looking at the black shadow in the sky, Yu Manlu's eyes were filled with a crazed anger and deep hatred. At the same time, both of his palms were also trembling under his sleeves. What would cause the family head of the number 1 Yu family to lose his cool as such? The moment he exchanged blows with his opponent, Yu Manlu felt an extremely familiar feeling. Yu Manlu almost wanted to shout out at that moment. Facing Yu Manlu's palm strike, Ling Tian was sent somersaulting in the sky and he felt his innards churning. This was the second time Ling Tian was forced into a retreat by an opponent. The last time was when he faced Justice's attack, but it wasn't anything embarrassing for Ling Tian to lose to the world's number 1 expert. However, Ling Tian was ambushing Yu Manlu this time and Yu Manlu had to deal with Ling Tian's suicidal attack at the same time. However, the result was that Ling Tian didn't gain the upper hand at all. While Ling Tian didn't lose out in this clash, it was true that Yu Manlu's cultivation was above his own. Only Ling Tian's destiny to perish had been rewritten. Facing Yu Manlu's flurry of kicks, the originally heavily injured Ling Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. When Yu Manlu had drifted over his head, Ling Tian finally exhausted the last bit of his energy and collapsed weakly. Ling Tian finally understood the gap between him and Yu Manlu. Even if he was in his prime state and used the assassination methods that he was so proud of, it would be impossible for him to kill this Yu family head. If not for the fact that Yu Manlu changed his attack at the last moment, Ling Tian would already be on his way to the afterlife. However, Ling Tian was already at his wits' end now and after receiving Yu Manlu's kicks, he was injured both internally and externally. His life was like a flickering candle that would be extinguished at any moment. At this moment, Ling Tian raised his head and was surprised to see another black-robed figure in the sky. Behind the black mask, a pair of familiar eyes could be seen. How familiar! How friendly! This was also the hope for Ling Tian to fight with the last bit of his life. Ling Tian was suddenly overwhelmed with happiness. I have finally seen the young noble again. It was the young noble who saved me. A familiar voice sounded in Ling Tian's ears, "Jump up." His originally exhausted body was suddenly filled with boundless energy again, and he managed to forcefully change the stance of his falling body. With a flash of his black iron sword, he clashed with the weapons beneath him, and his body flew up towards the sky by borrowing the force of the rebound. After exhausting his last bit of strength, he fell unconscious the moment his body flew up. Before falling unconscious, Ling Tian felt a sense of complete security and safety. He knew that his young noble would not let his body fall back down for sure. He no longer had to die. Ling Tian's figure shot down and grabbed Ling Tian's body. With a wave of his right hand, Ling Tian's sword was in his hands. Yu Manlu then roared, "Surround him! Shoot the arrows! Block him! He must not be allowed to leave!" Yu Manlu knew that the figure who had just arrived was even more powerful than the first pavilion head. Even if he was slightly weaker than himself, the difference wasn't huge. Thus, Yu Manlu personally charged forward as well. The various experts of the Yu family charged forward as well. If they were to surround Ling Tian completely, they would definitely be able to leave Ling Tian here tonight. Ling Tian's figure remained floating in midair, completely unhindered by the fact that he was carrying someone. A sword then slashed down, and with the addition of Ling Tian's inner chi, a half-foot sword light could be seen on the tip of the sword. The pavilion head of the unreturnable pavilion bore the brunt of the attack. He retreated as quickly as he could, and his sword shot out towards Ling Tian. He knew that if the sword light were to strike him, he would be a goner regardless of how many experts the Yu family had. His reaction was truly the most appropriate one. However, this was provided Ling Tian was attempting to attack him. A trace of mockery could then be seen on Ling Tian's lips, and the sword light on his sword disappeared suddenly. His sword then clashed with the incoming sword with a loud clang. Yu Manlu let out a roar. "Stop him! He wants to escape by borrowing the force of that attack." A pity, it was far too late. Hugging Ling Jian, Ling Tian borrowed the force from the attack and shot 40 feet into the sky. He was less than 30 feet away from the Yu residence's walls. Right at this moment, a ball of light shot out from a tree outside the Yu residence. It was as fast as lightning and covered in a dim green glow. As though it had its own sentience, the ball of light spun around Ling Tian. Yu Manlu was utterly enraged and knew that this was his opponent's escape route. He could not be bothered to issue any commands, but gathered his own inner chi and charged towards Ling Tian. At the same time, the arrows of the Yu family also shot towards Ling Tian like the boundless ocean. The force from Ling Tian's jump was completely spent, but Li Zhu had just begun to exert her strength. This was the moment where the old force was spent and the new force yet to take effect. Yu Manlu was not only fast, but also chose the right moment. He appeared in front of Ling Tian and sent 2 vicious palm strikes. Chapter 450, Sowing Discord Again. With a wave of his sword, Ling Tian generated a protective sword light and stabbed out thrice at Yu Manlu. Together with Ling Tian's stabbing sword, a sky full of hidden weapons shot down, lethally filled with Ling Tian's inner chi, and a wave of miserable groans sounded from below. Yu Manlu matched Ling Tian's stab without retreating and continued to charge forward instead. After spinning around to disperse Ling Tian's inner chi, Yu Manlu was even nearer to Ling Tian. Yu Manlu knew that if he were to slightly let up on his attacks, it would be impossible to capture the 2 black-masked men tonight. Right at this moment, Ling Tian's figure, which was about to sink back down, suddenly began floating up strangely. Following that, a green light that was tied to his body suddenly slipped and fell. Yu Manlu swiftly twisted his body and caught the green light. Upon coming into contact with the ball of green light, Yu Manlu could feel a tinge of warmth in his palms. It was actually a piece of top-grade warm jade. Furthermore, there was a pulling force as though something was tied onto it. Ling Tian's drifting figure suddenly approached Yu Manlu rapidly, and his sword cleaved down at the empty space between the both of them. Yu Manlu then felt the tugging force disappear completely, as though Ling Tian had cut something off. The distance between them was then completely opened up. The force from Yu Manlu's jump was spent, and he let out a sigh. Just when he was about to make a backflip to land on the ground, Yu Manlu suddenly felt a strong gust of wind approaching him, and Ling Tian's palm strike struck towards his right hand. To think that his opponent would take the initiative to launch an attack. Yu Manlu sneered and welcomed the palm strike with his own. Only then did he remember that he was still holding on to the jade pendant. He then threw out the jade pendant towards Ling Tian with his full strength. If Ling Tian was to catch the jade pendant, it would be like receiving a full-strength palm strike from Yu Manlu. Furthermore, Yu Manlu added some spin to the jade pendant to ensure that it would return to him if Ling Tian avoided it. After sending the jade pendant out, Yu Manlu sent out a palm strike of his own. At this moment, Yu Manlu looked at his opponent's gaze and felt that something was wrong. His opponent actually had a trace of delight in his eyes. Why? What was he delighted about? Could it be that he was scheming something? Just when Yuman Lu was full of doubts, Ling Tian had actually welcomed his own palm strike without avoiding it at all. After a low grunt, Ling Tian sent out a finger strike and the jade pendant was smashed into pieces with the fragments sent flying in all directions. Yuman Lu immediately realized that his opponent's objective was to destroy this piece of jade. Why? Could there be something wrong with this piece of jade? Jade pendant. Yuman Lu suddenly thought of something and his expression changed drastically. Ling Tian didn't say a single word, and just when he was about to leave with Li Zu's aid, he realized that there was a small black dot from the exploded jade pendant shooting towards him. Ling Tian quickly caught the black dot and his figure shot towards the sky the next moment. While Yuman Lu's cultivation was extremely profound, it was impossible for him to remain in midair for such a long time. He had no choice but to drift slowly onto the ground. Below him, a powerful gust of wind created by the many weapons shot towards Ling Tian. The 11 top-notch experts of the Yu family took action together. With a few dang sounds, Ling Tian swiftly deflected all of the weapons and his figure left the Yu residence. After landing on a tree, both Li Zu and Ling Tian immediately took their leave. By the time the various experts of the Yu family arrived at the top of the wall, both of their figures had already disappeared into the dark. Despite being trapped in the Yu residence and encircled by the Yu family's experts, their enemy actually managed to escape. Yuman Lu's countenance was ashen. Gather the broken fragments of that jade and piece them together. Don't even miss a single piece. I want to have an answer before daybreak. Yuman Lu issued his command angrily. Upon thinking about how his opponent willingly suffered a palm strike to destroy the piece of jade, Yuman Lu was certain that something was fishy. Perhaps the piece of jade may have a secret. While the black masked figure who arrived later obviously didn't unleash his full strength, his martial arts were obviously not any much lower than Yuman Lu's. In the world today, how many people could achieve such a height in their martial arts? Ling Tian? Thinking about that name, Yuman Lu shook his head and chuckled. While Ling Tian was powerful, he should not have reached such heights yet. Even if he were to train from his mother's womb, it would be difficult for him to achieve such heights. When his third brother, Yuman Tian, came back, Yuman Lu had questioned him about Ling Tian's martial arts in detail. According to Yuman Tian's description, while Ling Tian's martial arts were shocking and even better than Yuman Tian, it definitely wasn't by a huge margin. Together with him personally witnessing Ling Tian's performance on the battlefield, Yuman Lu had a good estimation in his heart. Based on Ling Tian's age, the cultivation that he had displayed was already considered astounding and he was definitely a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. However, Ling Tian was definitely far from being a match with this black-masked individual. Furthermore, from the way Yuman Tian described Ling Tian's martial arts should belong to the pure Yang path, which was obviously different from this black-masked individual. If that's the case, it was obvious which power this black-masked man belonged to. Thinking about the few clashes with the black-masked man and the familiar feeling, Yuman Lu fell into a deep consideration. In their few exchanges, the black-masked man had split his inner chi into a few different waves and his attack was like the never-ending waves of an ocean. Furthermore, this was not the only feeling Yuman Lu felt. When Yuman Lu exchanged palm strikes with the black-masked man, he felt as though he was in the waters and couldn't plant his feet firmly on the ground. His opponent's martial arts obviously belonged to the soft and gentle path but yet seemed to be hiding something. The cover-up only made it more obvious. Yuman Lu snorted and a chilly gaze shot out from his eyes. Do you really think that I am a fool? However, just what was the item that aided their escape? Even if a rope was tied to his waist, it should be obvious and impossible to hide from his eyes. Furthermore, just how thin could a rope be that could hold two people? Despite that, he just wasn't able to spot the rope. From today onward, they would have to guard against the brutal revenge of the first pavilion. Thinking about that, Yuman Lu couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Family Head. The 11 subdivision heads gathered together with their faces flushed red in embarrassment. Under the encirclement of almost all the Yu family's experts, not only was many of their men injured, their enemy had escaped. All of them were completely embarrassed and infuriated. It was as though someone had slapped them on the face. The pavilion head of the firmament charging pavilion held onto his foster brother's corpse with hatred in his bloodshot eyes. Comparing martial arts, there are at least 4 of you above the first pavilion head. Comparing numbers, we were far superior. Yu Man Lu sighed and said solemnly, despite having such an overwhelming advantage, we still allowed the enemy to escape. Do all of you feel embarrassed? Guilt could be seen on all of their faces, and they lowered their heads. It has been too peaceful for too long and problems are inevitable. Yu Man Lu remarked gloomily, thankfully, we weren't completely destroyed this time. Everyone should continue to work hard and the time will come soon. Everyone's faces changed and they knelt down. May Family Head punish us. Get up. Yu Man Lu let out a sigh and shook his head, I am very disappointed. He then turned his back to them all and left. While he wasn't able to capture the 2 people, it was still a good thing to give his subordinates a good warning through this incident. The moment his subordinates felt that they were number 1 in the world, they would eventually suffer a huge loss. After this lesson, all of his subordinates should be more careful and it would definitely be a good thing for them in the upcoming war. Not too long later, Yu Man Lu's voice sounded, carry out the extermination plan that we had discussed earlier on. Search the whole city. Send the jade piece into my study after it is pieced together. I don't want to see a single fragment missing. Everyone felt their heart tremble and acknowledged in unison. They knew that their family head was truly enraged by the event tonight. They had never seen their family head lose his cool as such for more than 10 years. If the extermination mission didn't satisfy the family head, all of their good lives would definitely be over. Thinking about the possible punishment they might face from their family head, everyone couldn't help but tremble slightly. Everyone had yet to leave and a white-dressed individual rushed out hastily. After giving a bow, he said, the family head instructed for the vice pavilion head's family to be brought into the Yu residence and taken care of by the family. As for his funeral, the pavilion head and head deacon should be in charge of it, and the family head will be there. From today onwards, if anyone dares to humiliate the vice pavilion head's family, they will be executed without mercy. I thank the family head for his benevolence. Everyone felt regret, hatred, and gratitude in their hearts as they thought, if we were to fail in our mission despite the family head treating us so well, we are better off dead. Yu Zanfeng was touched to the point tears filled his face, and even if Yu Man Lu were to command him to die right now, he would definitely carry out that order. However, none of them knew that after Yu Man Lu entered his study, he slammed the table and roared, "Water! Of heavenly wind!" At the same time, Yu Man Lu couldn't help but be filled with doubts. Could it be that the first pavilion's partner is actually the Shui family? Furthermore, the second black-masked figure definitely had exceptional martial arts but was restraining himself to hide something. However, I have accumulated many records of the Shui family's martial arts over the many years, and that black-masked figure's martial arts obviously walked the soft and flexible path. How could such martial arts be so easily hidden? Chapter 451, Supple as Water. But upon coming to this conclusion, Yu Man Lu was even more confused. Even if the Shui family was working together with the first pavilion, was there really a need to fight tooth and nail just to save an outsider? Even if it was to rope him in, the danger involved was really too great. If he had discovered in advance that there was another 2 of them involved, and set out an intricate trap, it would not be difficult to capture all of them forever. However, it was possible that the first pavilion was founded by the Shui family initially. If that was the case, then the ability of the Shui family had to be re-evaluated. With the first pavilion assisting the Shui family, their strength would rise to a new height. Wait a minute. Yuman Lu suddenly came to another conclusion, which seemed more plausible based on logic. The next night, Bright Jade City was once again engulfed in another round of bloodshed. After the new batch of officials stepped up into their positions, another round of assassinations quickly followed. The difference this time was that the death count was even higher than before, and the situation more severe, with at least 70-odd officials being killed. Even worse was that the government buildings were set on fire, and with the blaze spreading, hundreds of families lost their homes, and over 100 were burned to death. Based on the rumors, even the lofty and towering Yu family also faced huge losses during this incident. The blaze in the Yu residence reached to the skies and was seen by countless people. To see the greatest power of Bright Jade City being attacked was a rare sight, causing everyone to fear for their own safety. Bright Jade City then set down an order, and the original imperial troops that belonged to the Yu family now surrounded the entire city. The rumors spread that in his anger the Yu family head had employed all his experts to search the city for the killers. In an instant, the city was filled with the white robes of the various white jade experts from the Yu family. The violet robes of the purple jade experts were also seen as they scuttled back and forth, and the entire city seemed to have entered a suspenseful state. The usually peaceful and stable Bright Jade City, where the citizens did not even lock their doors at night, was suddenly shrouded with the aura of blood and slaughter. There was a group of people screaming their innocence while being beaten and locked up by the guards who threw them into prison. However, no one dared to revolt, as those who made a move only had the outcome of being sliced into two by the guards, causing fresh blood to flow miserably on the streets. The city gates on all four directions were tightly locked shut, not allowing anyone to enter or exit, and even the envoys stationed in Bright Jade City were also tightly watched, under the pretext of protection. For the first time in the last few centuries, Bright Jade City entered into an exceptional fearful state. As the sky started to brighten up, the dawn turned the sky into a white color much like to the underside of a fish belly. The sun rose as per usual, another day had begun. In the study of the Yu family, Yuman Lu looked at the jade pendant placed in front of him on his table. Several of the heads were standing respectfully off to the side, without saying a word. As for the supervisor of the patrols, he stood with his head lowered, with sweat constantly beading on his forehead. The piece of shattered jade was practically rebuilt from scratch, and from its surface, one could make out faint drawings, much like to that of billowing waves. At the bottom was a row of words carved on it, spelling out, "supple as water." If Shui Qianger was here, she would definitely recognize that this piece of jade was the exact one that was blackmailed from her when she had fallen captive under Ling Tian, her family's heirloom, Heaven's Heart Jade. However, while she might not be present, the people in this room were no run-of-the-mill characters either. Everyone, what impressions do you have towards this jade? Please state your thoughts. Without any change in his expression, Yuman Lu pointed at the jade which was shattered beyond repair, blandly saying, It somehow resembles the jade ornament that the little Princess Bing Yan has been carrying around with her. This subordinate remembers how the little princess was always seen running everywhere in the courtyard with this jade attached to her, and furthermore, her jade somehow looks exactly the same size as this. A fatty in black clothes stretched out his neck with difficulty, and after staring at the jade for a while, finally confirmed this fact. That's right. Yuman Lu nodded. The piece of jade on Bing Yan is actually the same type of treasured jade, an heirloom of our Yu family. A millennium ago, when the two great families each brought their experts for a final battle in Mount Vacant Sky, the two family heads battled until they fell into a hole within the mountain. Inside the hole actually had the skeletal remains of a peerless expert of his generation, named the Regretless Monarch. Beside him was placed two jades which were exact copies of each other. On one was drawn many clouds, with the phrase sleek as clouds, and the other was carved valleys and rivers instead, with the words we see right now. Yuman Lu paused for a while, surveying his surroundings, before continuing in an indifferent tone, "Together with this supple as water, this secret is something only the family heads are allowed to know, and even for the possessors of the jade are not an exception. Even though Bing Yan is aware that the jade she carries is immeasurably precious, she does not know of its origin." Everyone was suddenly enlightened. What Yu Man Lu was saying was actually a secret from a millennium ago, and it was furthermore one that only the family heads had the authority to know. Before this everyone had never even heard of such a thing, and only now did they realize that the jade hanging on the waist of the little princess was actually so precious. Yu Man Lu slowly continued, "At the area where the jades were placed, it was carved as thus on the stone wall. To separate the jades is to cause the destruction of mankind. When the jades come as one, all below heavens shall bow to it." Other than this, there was nothing else explaining about the jades. Upon seeing the phrase "all below heavens shall bow to it," both the ancestors immediately sprang towards it. But both of the capabilities were similar, and both sides could only end up with one piece in the end. Everyone spontaneously thought, no need to talk about the two seniors, anyone in the world, upon seeing this sentence, would also jump out. All below heavens shall bow down to it, what a great temptation. In the end, both of them fought till their dying breaths, and they knew that to continue fighting would cause both sides to suffer losses, and thus they agreed on a truce. They set down the date of a decisive fight to a decade later, with the winner taking it all. However, due to the fatal injuries that both sides received, after returning to their homes they could only leave details on this matter before they passed on. From then on, this became the reason why our two families became eternal enemies. In the end, this matter was made known to beyond and above heavens, and thus they arranged a 60-year generation battle between our two families, and that the winner would be allowed to be in possession of both the jades for a decade, following which they would have to be returned. Whichever side does not keep their word and tries to monopolize it would face the wrath of both sects. The battle for the jade pieces is the feud we've had between us and the Shui family all this while. On what context do we need the sects to butt in? How tyrannical. It serves above heavens right for being annihilated, and beyond heavens are going to suffer also if the martial order medallion owner fails to capture Ling Tian this time. Their reputation would be ruined. A few of the elders from the Yu family started grumbling. Yu Man Lu only let out a bitter laugh. Strength is everything. For our Yu family to have towered over the entire heavenly star continent for the past millennium, was it not because we had the strength? The reason why the above heavens got annihilated was also because their strength did not fit their status. A pity that the strength of beyond heavens is still overly strong. Even Elder Yu Zhaochen, the number talent in our Yu family for the past 300 years, still lost his life to them. Elder Yu was a heaven-sent genius. No one knows if he was besieged by all of the Beyond Heavens members on the day he died. To think they actually dared to make a show of it and send us his remains. If not for the fact that family had told us not to make any rash moves, we would have long gone and slaughtered them. An expert of the Yu family cursed. Beyond Heavens did not lie to us. The Great Elder and I had examined the corpse of Elder Yu, and we found that he was really only attacked by a single person. There were 2 identical palm prints found on his chest, one on each side, with all the bones surrounding the print having shattered. Furthermore, Elder Yu's robes were tidy, and his hair was even still well done. From this we deduced that the exchange between them lasted for less than 10 moves. This is how scary the opponent's strength was. To think that there could really be such a person in this world. A rare hint of fear appeared in the voice of Yu Man Lu as he spoke. Not even 10 moves? How is this possible? Everyone was stunned. As such, the moment I received the news that Wei Qingping had sent out the martial order medallion, I had believed Ling Tian to be a dead man. Nobody in this world would be able to escape the pursuit of the martial head. As such, before we have sufficient strength, Beyond Heaven sect will be a taboo. Yu Man Lu concluded. Back to topic. In this millennium, The two jades have been traded countless times between the Shui and Yu families, and in the end, no one was still able to discover the secret within them. After a long time, we begin to think that this was merely a joke played by the regretless monarch. As such, in the last 300 years, we began to battle merely to prove which side was superior, never asking about the jades ever again. However, as an heirloom, and furthermore a unique piece of warm jade which was beneficial towards frail bodies, I gave it to Bing Yin to wear. As the time of the battle neared, I was already planning to bring up the topic of the jade slip once again because I believe that while our ancestors were not able to see through it, with the multitude of talents we currently possess, it was still worth a try. But to think that before the battle even started, this piece of jade had already landed on my table. Yu Manlu left out bitterly, and furthermore, it's already shattered. Is family head certain that this jade belongs to the Shui family? Stroking his white beard, an elder spoke with furrowed brows. This may not be the case. Oh? Why does head deacon think so? Based on what I think, for such an important object, how could the Shui family just toss it out as though it was nothing? Furthermore, if this jade was really the real thing, we still would have to return it to them a decade after the battle. Why would the black-robed man destroy this family heirloom of theirs? Isn't that harming others without benefiting himself? As he scratched his head he continued, this old man is thinking, could this jade be a phony? Chapter 452, Deduction. The jade pendant shouldn't be fake. Yu Manlu frowned. Before this jade pendant was the biggest secret of both our families. Furthermore, there are only a handful of people aware of the shape and design of the jade pendant. Apart from the core members of the Yu family, there shouldn't be anyone else aware of it. Hearing that, everyone couldn't help but be extremely moved. Yu Manlu's words were also akin to displaying how much he trusted everyone present. They all couldn't help but be extremely grateful and moved. If that's the case, then things are truly bizarre. Everyone began to frown in deep thought. Could it be that he wanted to save the first pavilion head but didn't have anything else with him and thus had no choice but to use the jade? However, he never expected that family head would be able to snatch it, and in his anxiousness, he decided to destroy the jade to protect his identity. After discussing the matter for a long time, everyone felt that this was the only reasonable explanation and nodded their heads in agreement. No matter what, everyone was certain that the Shui family was definitely behind the mission tonight. Not a single one of them doubted this conjecture. Everyone was filled with indignation as they cursed the Shui family for their despicable actions. They were filled with hatred towards the Shui family for the actions they hired the first pavilion to perform. As all of them cursed the Shui family, someone suddenly remarked, "Family head, could it be that the first pavilion was set up by the Shui family? Would an ordinary power dare to pit themselves against our Yu family? While it is true that assassins are only hired by money, they would need to have the life to spend it. Regardless of how powerful they are, an ordinary assassin organization shouldn't dare to provoke our Yu family for some silver, right?" When this bold conjecture was raised, everyone present was immediately silenced. Even after their long discussion, none of them had actually thought in that direction. They all treated the first pavilion as an independent organization because the first pavilion was just too famous for the past few years. None of them were willing to believe that the Shui family was able to nurture such a powerful side branch. Furthermore, the Shui family which had the first pavilion by their side would be extremely difficult to evaluate. I originally thought so as well. However, I thought about another possibility as well that would solve all of our previous doubts. Yu Manlu said. Everyone bowed. "May family head instruct us?" Or perhaps, I jumped to a conclusion far too quickly. That black-masked man may not be the legendary first pavilion head. Yu Manlu said. "How is it possible? If he isn't the first pavilion head, how could his concealment technique be so exceptional? He managed to hide from us all, and his killing methods are extremely terrifying. If you were to say that he wasn't the best assassin in the world, I wouldn't be able to believe it. The firmament-charging pavilion head, Yu Zanfeng, said. Out of the many experts present, the person who wanted to kill Ling Jian the most was undeniably Yu Zanfeng. 1. The black-masked man who had fought all of you had undoubtedly achieved exceptional heights in his inner chi, martial arts, and movement techniques. Furthermore, his concealment technique is unfathomable, and thus I jumped to the conclusion that he was the first pavilion head. Yu Manlu explained. Then are there any more doubts? Yu Zanfeng asked. There are many suspicious points. First, I originally didn't want to form enmity with the first pavilion and even had the intention of subduing them. Thus, I promised them generous conditions at the start. If he was truly the first pavilion head, even if he wouldn't agree to my demands, he shouldn't have remained silent. In fact, as long as he pointed out the power which hired him, I would have immediately let him off. It was a pity that he didn't say anything from start to end. Could it be that it was because he didn't have the authority to make such a decision? Yu Manlu said. If this is the only suspicious point, then it can be easily explained. An elite assassin wouldn't open his mouth, and as the first pavilion head, he definitely has a great deal of pride. It is reasonable for him to remain silent. The head deacon said. This is the second suspicious point which I wanted to point out. What does everyone think about the first person's movement techniques? Yu Manlu asked. He was like a formless shadow, and his movements were completely unpredictable. I have never seen such a weird movement technique. While Yu Zanfeng hated Ling Jian to the bone, he felt a lingering fear when thinking about Ling Jian's martial arts. This is where the second suspicious point is. I exchanged a few blows with the second black-masked man, and the exquisiteness of his movement technique is even above the first black-masked man. If the first person is like a shadow, the second person has exceeded the realm of a shadow. Furthermore, both of their movement techniques definitely belong to the same origin. This is undeniable. Yu Manlu said. According to what family head said, the second black-masked man definitely belongs to the Shui family. If that's the case, doesn't that prove that the first pavilion belongs to the Shui family? The head deacon argued. Not necessarily. Since the second masked man belongs to the Shui family, the first masked man must definitely belong to the Shui family as well. However, the first masked man may not necessarily be the first pavilion head like what I had deduced. In fact, he may not even belong to the first pavilion. Comparing both of their martial arts, it is more likely that the second masked man is the first pavilion head. However, would a Shui family member who is holding on to the ancestral treasure of the Shui family risk himself to save a partner that he is working with? If he isn't careful, he may very well perish in the process. Thus, I deduce that while the both of them would definitely belong to the Shui family, they may not necessarily belong to the first pavilion. Yu Manlu concluded. If that's the case, the strength the Shui family has stationed in Bright Jade City can't be underestimated. With the presence of such an individual, our previous arrangements have to be adjusted, lest we suffer a loss. This is a good suggestion. Yu Manlu agreed. The head deacon shall be in charge of the adjustments. As for the first pavilion, my conjecture is no more than a conjecture. Regardless of whether or not the first pavilion is related to the Shui family, they are definitely our enemy. Which power they belong to isn't that important. Yu Manlu stared at the shattered jade pendant in front of him and fell into deep thought. Waving his hands, he said, "You guys may take your leave." Everyone bowed to Yu Manlu and silently retreated. When Ling Tian threw out this piece of jade, he never imagined that the jade that Shui Qianra gave him had such an important origin. In fact, even Shui Qianra herself may not have known about it. If Ling Tian knew about the origin, he surely would never have used the jade pendant. Ling Tian never imagined that his originally flawless plan was riddled with holes because of this mysterious jade pendant. He never imagined that due to the great origins of this piece of jade, The Yu family would come up with so many explanations because he destroyed it. However, with every loss comes a gain. The loss of the precious jade pendant was definitely a huge loss, but where was the gain? Under the dim glow of the lamp, Ling Tian's bloodied unconscious body lay on the bed with his eyes closed. Ling Tian's hands worked swiftly to the point that after images could be seen. Stopping his blood, poking his acupoint, cleaning his wounds, applying medicine, bandaging them. Seeing the busy Ling Tian, Li Zhu, who was walking in with a tub of hot water, asked, "Your subordinate?" "No. He is my brother." "Is he training in the divine shocking dragon formula? You are truly so good to this brother of yours. His cultivation formula is almost complete and should be the same as yours, right? You actually didn't hold anything back?" Li Zhu asked. "He is a brother in this life of mine. Why would I give my brother an incomplete cultivation formula?" Ling Tian stood up and wiped off the sweat on his forehead. "One of my objectives in entering Bright Jade City was to give them the completed divine shocking dragon formula. This matter can't be delayed. After all, they aren't like me who had the experience of cultivating the formula once. It is far too easy for something to go wrong." "Oh?" Li Zhu turned around and said, "His martial arts are truly exceptional. Are you treating him like Jing Wuming?" "Jing Wuming?" Ling Tian's eyes narrowed. Jing Wuming was just a slave of Shangguan Jinhong. How can he be compared to Ling Jian? Let me repeat myself, Ling Jian is my brother. My brother for all eternity. Jinj too. HMPH, HMPH. Li Zhu grunted. Every single move of his is obviously a killing move. Furthermore, they are the sharpest and cleanest way to kill someone. Actually, would it be a bad thing to have a subordinate like Jing Wuming? A fiercely loyal individual who would follow his master regardless of right or wrong? This is a servant that all ambitious figures would hope to have. Ling Tian let out a bitter laugh and didn't say another thing. It would be extremely difficult to change the mind of this stubborn lass. Furthermore, during the initial phase of him training them, he did indeed work towards that direction. It was only after the many years of interaction and sincerity by Ling Jian which changed his mind. From then on, Ling Tian truly treated Ling Jian as a brother. This was something that was better left unsaid. Li Zhu let out a chuckle and tactfully changed the topic. Seeing Ling Tian busily tending to Ling Jian's wounds, she stood by the door and asked, "You changed your cultivation formula slightly when in the Yu family, right?" From afar, I didn't notice a huge commotion in the battle, and it was obviously extremely different from your usual style. Ling Tian revealed a bright smile. That was the Shui family's cultivation formula. I tried my best to emulate it. As he said that, he sliced off a piece of curled-up flesh on Ling Jian's back. Despite still being unconscious, Ling Jian's back very obviously trembled in pain. After letting out a long "oh," Li Zhu said profoundly, "It seems like someone is scheming something again. No wonder." Chapter 453, Final Hope. Li Zhu naturally knew that after one stepped into the 7th stage of the Divine Shocking Dragon Formula, the Xian realm, they would be able to change the characteristics of their cultivation method. Extreme hardness can be changed into extreme softness. Extreme yin changed into extreme yin. The countless changes would give an enemy a big headache, and it was also the reason why Ling Tian could face Yi Qingchen despite just entering the Xian realm. All these years, you have truly come up with many schemes. Are you addicted to it? Don't you feel tired of it? Li Zhu said teasingly. So Ling Tian ripped a piece of clean cloth and wrapped up the last wound on Ling Jian's body. Only then did he stand back up and wash his hands by the door. It seems like you have other thoughts. Of course. Li Zhu folded her arms and rolled her eyes. Schemes are no more than little games. Using a scheme to trap someone and deal with small affairs is still reasonable. However, little schemes wouldn't be able to affect the victory and defeat of a battle. While it may be sufficient to change the imperial family of an empire, it would definitely require a long period of time. In such chaotic times, the use of your little tricks and schemes is limited." "Oh?" Ling Tian raised his eyebrows and sat down on a chair. "Then what do you think I should do now?" No hegemon from the ancient times until now was able to rule over the world by just scheming. Li Zhu said, "The most important thing that would determine the ruler of the world would be warfare. You must raise up the flags of war and openly engage in battle. You must not hope for luck to be victorious. Do you truly think that these little schemes and tricks of yours will win you the world? Even if you are able to do so, it will take a few decades for sure, provided that everything goes your way. At that time, would there be any meaning or joy even if you succeed?" "You are right," Ling Tian agreed, "schemes are naturally insufficient to rule over the world. However, you have ignored something special about this world. Before war truly breaks out, even the Yu, Zhou and Shui families have to tread carefully. Up until now, all the various powers are still hiding their true strength, and all of their trump cards are like the young miss of feudal societies, never taking a step out of their house. Do you truly think that a young nouveau riche family like my Ling family would be able to raise the banners of war and openly sweep through the continent?" Li Zhu was stumped. "I also wish to storm through Heavenly Star Continent and wipe out all of my opponents with a thunderous strike. I will then collate my forces and launch my attacks on the other two continents to build my ambition on millions of corpses. However, is this possible? If I were to raise the banners of war before my strength is mature, I will definitely be a huge target for the other powers. At that time, would I be any different from the other powers that were tricked so badly by Ling Tian?" Ling Tian asked solemnly. "I'm sorry," Li Zhu lowered her head in guilt, "I didn't consider the matter carefully." "No. Your opinion was extremely useful," Ling Tian said seriously, "however, the time isn't ripe yet. After the matters in Bright Jade City are over and I settle the matter of the Dongfeng family, it would be the right time for me to raise the banners of war. But before that, I have no choice but to be extremely wary." Ling Tian said with a self-mocking smile, "In the previous life, I made the mistake of being too high profile. How would I make the same mistake again? After such a brutal and miserable lesson, I would have to learn a little from my mistake, right? Ha ha ha." While Ling Tian was laughing, Li Zhu could hear the bitterness in his voice. Thinking about the miserable experience Ling Tian had in his previous life, Li Zhu couldn't help but weep silently. Walking to the bedside, Ling Jian's breathing had already stabilized but he was still unconscious. Ling Tian then supported Ling Jian up and sat cross-legged behind him. Placing a palm on Ling Jian's back, Ling Tian circulated his inner qi and transmitted his pure inner qi to Ling Jian. After probing Ling Jian's internal condition, Ling Tian realized that Ling Jian was almost at his wit's end with his meridians in a complete mess. When Ling Tian transmitted his own inner qi into Ling Jian, he could feel an empty feeling, despite both of their inner qi having the same source. Even after a full cycle, Ling Jian's inner qi was still completely unresponsive. It could be seen just how miserable the previous battle was. Li Zhu watched silently and spread out her divine sense to observe the surroundings carefully. While Ling Tian didn't give her any instructions, she knew at the very first moment that she should take up the role of protecting Ling Tian. At the same time, she tried to create a conversation. "The more I think about it, the more I feel that your gamble with the martial order medallion owner is an intentional move on your part. How strange." "Why is it strange?" Ling Tian's eyes remained closed and he continued to transmit his inner qi. At the same time, the corner of his lips curled up slightly upon hearing what Li Zhu said. "I can't place my finger on it. If the appearance of the martial order medallion was unintentional but you chose to escape, it doesn't fit into your personality." Li Zhu shook her head frustratedly, "But it wouldn't be able to believe that you were prepared for the martial order medallion. After all, the strength of the martial order medallion owner is too far above ours." Right at this moment, Ling Jian's body shook. With the aid of Ling Tian's pure and powerful inner chi, Ling Jian's inner chi finally responded and followed Ling Tian's inner chi in a circulation cycle. Ling Jian's eyes then began to open, and he said weakly, "Thank you, young noble. Recuperate well. Don't talk." After determining that Ling Jian was able to control his own inner chi, Ling Tian stopped transmitting his inner chi and got off the bed. "Will you give me an explanation, young noble Ling?" Li Zu looked at Ling Tian and said with a smile. "Before the martial order medallion was used by Wei Chengping, I already had the intention to leave Skybearing to take a look around. Apart from understanding the trump cards of the various powers, I had some other plans." Ling Tian smiled. "You can't possibly think that after being in the world for so many years, the only strength under my command is the Ling family courtyard, right? I wanted to take a look at how well developed the other organizations under me are. After all, receiving news from a letter isn't the most reliable method. Only after making an evaluation of all my forces will I decide if I want to start the war. However, the arrival of the martial order medallion owner gave me a great excuse." "A great excuse?" Li Zu asked in confusion. "That's right, an excuse." Ling Tian nodded his head before chuckling. "If I disappear without a trace in Skybearing, all the other powers would definitely follow my trace closely and the various cards which I have hidden may be revealed. Even if they only manage to find one or two of my cards, that would still be a huge loss." Right when I was feeling a headache over this, the martial order medallion owner appeared. It is like having a naked lady throw herself into my arms when I was thinking about my wife. Exactly what I wanted. Haha. Li Zu's face turned red as she grunted, "How shameless." She then asked curiously, "Exactly what you wanted?" "That's right. There are 4 advantages of me leaving Skybearing," Ling Tian said solemnly. "First, my subordinates in Skybearing will be given a chance to mature, and they will not be so reliant on me in future. Second, I can use the reason of the martial order medallion to take revenge on the Northern Wei imperial family, getting rid of the weakest party in this war for hegemony. Third, I can make use of this time to put things in order and also investigate the strength of the other powers. With me being pursued by the martial order medallion owner, anyone who wants to approach me would definitely be extremely cautious. No power in the continent would want to risk hangering justice. Thus, our tracks were unknowingly concealed. Fourth, with my movement techniques, I can bring justice along with me to charge around the continent brashly. As long as I am not killed by him, I can even make use of him to draw out the various trump cards of the other families. Currently, didn't the Zhou family reveal almost all of their trump cards?" Ling Tian then gave a mysterious smile. "It isn't a difficult matter for me to escape from justice. You should know that our face-changing techniques are extremely advanced in this world. Furthermore, with my concealment techniques, how many people in the world would be able to find me?" With regards to what Ling Tian had said, Li Zu couldn't bring herself to agree with him. While everything he said was logical and things had indeed gone according to his plan, Ling Tian thought far too highly of himself. However, Li Zu only frowned slightly but didn't voice out her thoughts. Since her thoughts were different from his, it would be best for her to talk to him about it when he was calm and she was alone with him. Li Zu was extremely familiar with Ling Tian's character and knew that this wasn't the best time to disagree with him. Nothing is absolute, so could Ling Tian's plan possibly be flawless? Can he truly put the people of the world in his palms and play with them? HMPH, if you really chose to hide in a rural village or live secluded in the forest, while justice may not be able to find you, your gamble with him will last for half a year. For you to break away from the world for half a year, many things on the continent would be different and the situation on the continent may be completely different. If you want to continue controlling the various organizations under your power, you can't truly break away from the world. However, if you were to appear at a secret stronghold and found by justice, it would be extremely disadvantageous for you. Thus, you decided to lead justice to play hide-and-seek with you while not delaying your affairs at the same time. What a good plan of yours. Li Zu followed along with Ling Tian's words and pointed out what Ling Tian was thinking. Haha, my parents were the one who gave birth to me, but Li Zu is the person who knows me best. Ling Tian laughed heartily. No wonder you were able to set up a trap full of flaws but yet still lure me in. You truly understand me too well. After untying the knot in his heart, Ling Tian no longer placed the matter in his heart. Seeing how Li Zu was interrogating him, he intentionally used the matter to provoke her, lest she continue her interrogations further. If that's the case, he would truly be exhausted and thus better off shutting her up quickly. While Li Zu did indeed understand Ling Tian extremely well, Ling Tian also understood her weakness. Now that he had attacked her weakness, the effect was immediate. HMPH. Li Zu grunted and turned around, with her lips pursed and silent in dissatisfaction. Finally some peace. Ling Tian let out a sigh in his heart. Even if I am a little despicable, so be it. I can finally have some peace. Such peace truly doesn't come easily. In the same night, while the Yu family was uncomfortable and Ling Tian's party almost experienced a calamity, the ones who suffered the most was the Shui family. The huge setback drove Shui Qianhuan to the brink of insanity. Shui Qianhuan truly felt as though he was pulled down from heaven to hell. The poor young noble Shui was still intoxicated by his dream of controlling the Northern Wei Imperial Palace. But the next moment, he suffered from an unbearable and almost unthinkable setback. This setback was far worse than when he led the 400,000-strong Northern Wei army and suffered defeat. This time, everyone who died belonged to the Shui family. The roots which his Shui family had in Northern Wei were completely uprooted. Nothing was left behind. The Yu family's extermination mission was based on the principle of killing the innocent rather than letting anyone go. The Imperial Court of Northern Wei in Bright Jade City was completely washed clean. While there were a few innocent parties amongst those killed, not more than 30% of those killed were innocent. The rest of them belonged to the Shui family. Regardless of the old spy who had concealed himself for decades or the newly appointed official, none of them were spared. All of the spies which the Shui family had planted over the past few decades were executed. The losses suffered couldn't even be measured with numbers. The Shui family had always been extremely careful over the past few decades and spared no expense in aiding their spies to climb up the ranks of authority. After the Northern Wei incident, the Shui family had already occupied almost half of the imperial court and had quite a huge authority. After that, they borrowed the strength of the first pavilion and killed many officials of the Northern Wei imperial court. The Shui family then paid a huge price to overcome many barriers before allowing the lower-leveled officials of their Shui family to rise up the hierarchy and take up important posts, occupying almost all the important posts in Bright Jade City. According to young noble Shui's estimations, Bright Jade City would fall into the hands of his Shui family if nothing went wrong along the way. In fact, they would be able to create a huge amount of trouble without waiting for such a long time. It was a pity that the Yu family had decided to mimic the moves of the first pavilion launch an all-out massacre. This time, they had truly wiped out almost all of the Shui family's spies and manpower in Northern Wei. Decades of effort was completely wasted. While there were still some spies who weren't executed, the ones executed were the leaders and brains of the Shui family stationed in Northern Wei. Just like the saying, a headless snake can't move and a headless bird can't fly. The leftover spies were like a bunch of headless flies and wouldn't pose any further threats. If the Shui family wanted to build up their information network again with the thin foundation left behind, they would definitely need a decade of effort. Furthermore, the Northern Wei imperial family was completely finished and the Northern Wei territory belonged to the Yu family. It can be said that the Shui family's mission in Northern Wei had ended in a complete failure. After this calamity, young noble Shui Qianhuan was left completely alone. In fact, he would be facing the threat of being caught by the Yu family. It could be said that he was currently in a life-or-death situation. When he made use of the previously agreed-upon method to contact the first pavilion, he couldn't get a response. It was as though the first pavilion had never appeared in Bright Jade City before and that everything which had happened was no more than a nightmare. At the end of the dream, it disappears without a trace. However, this dream was far too cruel to Shui Qianhuan. Shui Qianhuan fell into a daze as he thought about the many things which had happened after he came to the Heavenly Star Continent. He suddenly had a feeling that every action of his was being controlled by a large invisible hand, forcing him step by step into the dire straits he was in. Young Master, the Yu family has been thoroughly enraged by the assassination incident and they are executing the various powers stationed in Bright Jade City. By his side, Shui Qianhuan's guard said, the Yu family is now searching the whole city and it won't be long before they arrive here. Furthermore, we have already lost most of our manpower and we are lacking in information. We don't have much time left and just to be safe. Leave? Shui Qianhuan sneered and said with desolation, even if I can walk out of Bright Jade City, where can I go? Shui 7. Almost all the experts who followed D from Heavenly Wind have perished. On top of that, almost all the spies which the family has planted over the past few decades in Bright Jade City have perished in just a single night. We have only suffered such a huge loss because of my decision. Even if I can keep my life today, how will I be able to face the members of our Shui family? How will I be able to face my father and the various elders who placed their expectations on me? As long as you remain alive, there will always be hope. Shui 7 lowered his head and said in a depressed tone, as long as young master preserves your life, there will be a chance to rise up again. If you give up on yourself now, you will never have a chance to turn the situation around. Rise up again? Ha ha ha. Rise up again? Shui Qianhuan burst out into an agitated laughter filled with hopelessness. Since you said those words, it means that you also understand that my title of being the first successor will definitely be revoked. Shui Qianhu, Shui Qianzhong and Shui Qianhai have been eyeing this title for so many years already. How would they let me off so easily? Haha, when I return to Heavenly Wind, what awaits me would definitely be a severe punishment from the family. This time, even my father will not be able to protect me. Would I still have a chance to rise up again? Shui 7 looked at the young noble Shui who was on the verge of insanity and remained silent. However, that was indeed the truth. It would be a blessing for Shui Qianhuan to keep his life. As for his future of succeeding the family, there wasn't even a need to talk about it. However, Shui 7 was no more than a servant in the Shui family. What else could he say? We definitely have to leave, but before I leave, I want to vent my anger. Shui Qianhuan stood up abruptly with a crazed look in his eyes. Who was the one who forced me into such dire straits? Am I going to just leave like that? Vent your anger? Young master, are you going to deal with the Yu family? Shui 7 hesitated for a moment before asking carefully. That's right. The Yu family. That old man Yu Manlu made use of my ambitions to wipe out the elites of my Shui family. This hatred is irreconcilable. I will not be a man if I don't take revenge. Shui Qianhuan grit his teeth and his eyes were bloodshot with his body trembling. However, with our current strength, Shui 7 said with a frustrated expression. With Shui Qianhuan's current strength, it would be challenging for them to even obstruct Yu Manlu slightly, much less take his revenge. Yes. We are indeed too weak on our own. However, we have our allies and Ms. Chen. I can pay any price necessary to contact Miss Chen and my sister for aid. No matter what, I must definitely make the Yu family remember me. As he mentioned Ling Tian who he thought about day and night, Shui Qianhuan's gaze finally regained some clarity. However, it was quickly replaced with pain and hatred again. As the young master of the Shui family, Shui Qianhuan's standards had always been extremely high. Furthermore, He had grown up together with a top-notch beauty like his sister, Shui Qiang. How would he take a liking to ordinary ladies? He only felt his heart beat rapidly upon meeting Ling Tian, and for the first time in his life, understood what it meant to long for someone. At the same time, he also became more expectant towards his future. While Ling Tian was completely disinterested in him, it made Shui Qianhuan even more stubborn in his heart. What one can't gain is what he would yearn for the most. Right when he was high-spirited and secretly dreaming about his beautiful future, such a huge loss had occurred which completely destroyed his beautiful dream. When he returned to his family, freedom would already be a luxury. There wasn't a need to talk about having a beauty to accompany him for the rest of his life. Realizing this point, Shui Qianhuan felt his spirit collapse as he grabbed onto his hair and knelt on the ground. The feeling of having his dreams ruthlessly shattered in just a single night had completely destroyed this Shui family genius. She will help me. My sister will help me for sure. Miss Chen will also help me for sure. Since Miss Chen was able to pay a huge price to hire the first pavilion to deal with the Yu family and work with me, she would definitely be able to help me. Miss Chen treats me. As he knelt on the ground, Shui Qianhuan began muttering under his breath. Up until the very end, he muttered incomprehensibly, and even he himself didn't know what he was saying. The tears which he would never shed had also trailed down his cheeks. This was Shui Qianhuan's final hope. Chapter 454, Cut Sleeves, Shared Peaches. How would Shui Qianhuan be aware that not only was he maligning Yu Manlu, he had also wrongly accused the entire Yu family? From start to the end, the Yu family had merely acted out of self-preservation and defense, and the whole scheme was actually cooked up by the goddess in his heart, the one whom he regarded as his beloved, Miss Ling Tian. If he were to find out the truth, he would probably lose his will to live. Furthermore, this was merely a small portion of the grand scheme Ling Tian had come out with. Shui 7 sighed once, before retreating in silence. As the hidden bodyguard of Shui Qianhuan, how could he be unaware of the feelings his master had towards the maiden Ling Tian? However, no matter the case, there was no salvaging this situation. Even regarding the fact of Shui Qianhuan expecting Ling Tian to lend her troops for his revenge, Shui 7 himself believed that there was not even a tiniest chance that would actually happen. Both our families are only working on the context of mutual benefits, and now that you have already lost your worth, to have Miss Ling Tian not kick you while you're down would already be good enough. How do you expect her to help you? This sentence was of course spoken silently in Shui 7's heart, and not out loud. However, these were his true thoughts. Upon thinking of how Ling Tian had looked at his young master with the eyes as though she saw a repulsive toad, Shui 7 silently sighed to himself. To plead for help, forget about having the door, even the window would probably not be open to him. He could not fathom. Just how was it that all the guards around his young master could see the situation crystal clear, but his intellectually peerless young master could actually be such an imbecile at this time? Could he not see that this was an impossibility? You're awake? Ling Yan blandly spoke. By his side, Ling Jian had just completed a cycle and was slowly opening his eyes. Yes. Ling Jian struggled to get up. Many thanks to young noble for saving me. Lie down properly. Are you really that eager for death? By another side, the little Miss Li Zhu impolitely scolded, with such huge injuries, why are you struggling for? Ling Jian has brought trouble to young noble and should have paid for it with his life. Ling Jian coldly glanced once at Li Zhu, his tone unchanging. While he did not know who this lass was, and why she was together with his young noble, his deep-rooted thinking from young would not allow him to be lying down while his young noble could still stand. Even if he was injured, as long as he had that bit of strength, he had to be at least seated. Disregarding the obstruction from Li Zhu, Ling Jian still pulled himself into a sitting position. Due to the extreme loss of blood, he could only use his arms to prop up his weak body. The whole time, he trembled non-stop. As he guiltily spoke, Ling Jian has failed the expectations of young noble and even made you expose yourself to danger. I really feel extremely uncomfortable in my heart. May young noble please grant me punishment." Ling Tian indifferently stared at him as he used a hand to rub his own cheek, saying in a grave tone, "Forget about it, there's no need to mention this matter anymore. This time, I also came over to Bright Jade City to scout the deployment and trump cards of the Yu family. However, I never expected you to have already created such a scene before I arrived there. While it seems like you overestimated your capabilities a little, this also allowed us to see the true strength of the Yu family. I guess this counts as a sort of achievement, so we can nullify your punishment. However, there's something that I must berate you about." "Many thanks to young noble. May I know what is it regarding? Please explain further." Ling Jian gratefully replied, a faint concern suffusing his expression as he continued, "Not sure how Ling 19 and the rest are faring now. I originally ordered them, that if they did not receive any news from me at 3 a.m., then they were to immediately retreat out of Bright Jade City." "They'll be alright," Ling Tian dryly replied, as he stepped forward and grasped hold of Ling Jian's shoulders. Sending a stream of internal energy in, he nodded with satisfaction upon seeing that Ling Jian's internal injuries had taken a turn for the better. He then continued, "I've already sent them a hidden signal, telling them to conceal themselves properly. I estimate that by tonight, they would come looking for us." "That's good. Luckily young noble had reached here in the nick of time, otherwise I wouldn't know what those kids would do." Upon hearing the reassurance, Ling Jian's taut nerves finally relaxed. With the aid from Ling Tian's energy, his body and spirit improved yet another notch. "Jian, do you know what's the real reason that I want to rebuke you about?" Ling Tian suddenly spoke. Young noble wants to blame Ling Jian for overestimating his own capabilities, jumping headfirst to spy on the dragon lair or tiger's den, right? Ling Jian replied. "No, how could I not understand your good intentions? You wish to pave the road for me in the future and to know your enemy, that's not a bad thing. However, have you thought about it? If your actions today result in the fact that you would never be at my side in the future, so what if I own all under the heavens? I wish to have all under the heavens to share with my brothers, with you, Ling Chen, Ling Qi, as well as all of our other 50 brothers. And not to end up the only one standing alone on a lonely peak, do you understand?" Ling Tian's gaze grew gentler. Unshed tears hung on Ling Jian's eyes as he choked. The emotions of young noble have been deeply remembered by Ling Jian. Just remembering it isn't enough. I want you swear to me, that from today onward, no matter how dangerous of a situation you face, you are not allowed to give up so easily. Even if the chance comes for you to use your life to trade for you man lose, or anyone else's, you must not act rashly. Swear to me. Ling Tian suddenly snapped. Yes. Ling Jian also raised his voice in response, his body trembling. Ling Tian now allowed Ling Jian to lie back down, for the few moves he had made had already caused his wounds to seep out blood once more. Look at this, your wounds have opened again. Why were you so emotional? You really don't know what it means to die. I already told you not to move, so why are you moving so much? All my efforts have gone to waste. A voice with suppressed anger sounded. Other than suffering under Ling Tian's hands, Li Zhu had never been at a disadvantage before, even when facing justice. Looking at how Ling Jian was treating her like the air he was breathing in, she could not help but be incensed, and with her furrowed brows, she really looked quite fierce. This lady is? Ling Jian narrowed his eyes, a bright ray shooting through them as he eyed her intently. While he was heavily injured, and while he could feel that this lass had skills far surpassing him, Ling Tian was still the only one whom he would listen to. Other than him, while he would maintain the utmost respect, but even the monarch of a country wouldn't enter his eyes. Let alone this total stranger of a lass that was talking to him in such an impolite tone. It was just that this lass was together with Ling Tian right now, and while he was unable to determine her identity, he did not dare to act rashly. However, his voice quickly became icy. "What, this lady, that lady?" Li Zhu snorted, and her eyes grew large as she quickly thought, "You should call me madam, or..." As she spoke, looking at Ling Jian's face, she was already cursing Ling Tian to the high heavens. Who said that he was someone of his own free will? One look at him and everyone would know that he only listened to Ling Tian himself, completely not placing others in his eyes. How was this different from the case of Jing Wuming, who was only loyal to Shangguan Jinhong? 1. However, Li Zhu was not stupid. She immediately knew that if she wanted to pressure Ling Jian, unless she used the name of Ling Tian, she would not be able to do anything even with her martial skills. As such, she immediately termed herself as the madam, believing that it would be of some use. However, she never expected that the moment she opened her mouth, Ling Tian at the back immediately face-planted on the floor. "You're the official wife of young noble?" Ling Jian's next move however shocked Li Zhu. Even after she had used this killing move, Ling Jian's expression remained unchanged, only that his gaze grew sharper and colder, even a bit of cold killing intent. As though he was treating her like his sworn enemy. To think that she dared to name herself the official wife. Ling Jian was fuming inside his heart. Our last Chen has already silently sacrificed herself for over a decade for the young noble, to the point that her presence was not even felt, just trying her best to live on for the young noble. Even the little princess of the #1 family, Yu Bingyan, was unable to shake Ling Qian's position. Only last Chen had the qualifications to be the wife of Ling Tian. A woman that had just appeared out of nowhere wants to be called madam. Forcing Ling Qian below her? She was the one who did not know of death. Ling Jian's care and concern towards Ling Qian was well known. In his heart, the only two people who had a place were his master Ling Tian, and the one he always viewed like his blood sister Ling Qian. At this point, seeing that Li Zhu was actually threatening the position of Ling Qian, how would he treat her kindly? Li Zhu was incomparably depressed. What was up with this kid? The word madam seemed to have given him quite a provocation, but that seemed to be the only course to take for her to obtain control over him. Could it be? Li Zhu's eyes slowly grew larger and rounder as she turned to look at Ling Tian. A jade-white hand immediately sprang out to cover her mouth as her eyes opened big, and she immediately swallowed the sentence she was about to spit out. Could you guys be comrades in bed? Brokeback Mountain? Seeing Li Zhu's expression, Ling Tian immediately guessed what Li Zhu was thinking about, and could only laugh and smack her on the head in annoyance. What are you thinking about? This time you're in trouble. No one has ever dared to claim to be my wife in front of Ling Jian. Your guts are really huge. This Ling Jian here is the famed first pavilion head, the #1 assassin. Whoever he wants to kill will die without a doubt, he has never failed. Could it be that you guys are cut sleeves, and shared peaches, too? So it turns out you are now into such a thing. Li Zhu's eyes were round in astonishment. Obviously, she did not place the fact of Ling Jian being the #1 assassin in mind, but rather,
Thank you for your continued following. Please support us by subscribe to encourage our continued creation. And press the bell to notify new chapter from us. Thank you.